Donald Trump is being publicly humiliated by even major players in right-wing media over his de facto surrender in the unnecessary trade wars that he triggered with Mexico and Canada. And some of his critics include MAGA Fox News host Laura Ingraham and the Wall Street Journal, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video, you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I have no doubt that this is going to piss Donald Trump off because people at Fox News and the Wall Street Journal have been paying close attention, and even they are calling out this nonsense, this idea that Donald Trump secured a win. He conquered Canada and Mexico. It's bullshit, and even Laura Ingraham recognizes it. We're going to play the clip and unpack it together.
I'm not too impressed with the Canadian response, frankly. I mean, the fentanyls are, I don't know what that's going to do. And I guess they'll have a few helicopters flying at the border. I mean, it's not nothing, but they were going to get slapped with 25% tariffs, and now those are gone for at least 30 days. I'm not sure what's going to happen in 30 days. Maybe some other concessions, but I think President Trump saw a huge negative reaction to this, as I know you predicted, I predicted, from Wall Street, from the markets, from all the establishment types. Do you think he reacted to that?
So let's stop that, because she's talking to Patrick Bet-David, who is a MAGA influencer. He's big shit on YouTube. I mean, very influential. But I was actually kind of surprised that Laura Ingraham was honest enough to say, yeah, this ain't it. Yeah. What Canada gave Donald Trump in demand or in response to a 25% tariff threat is pretty unimpressive, which means Donald Trump made an unimpressive gambit. And it's true. We've been talking about this nonstop. What Canada gave Trump, what Mexico gave Trump, are effectively commitments that they've either made to President Biden before or that they were already in the process of making long before this trade war threat. As a reminder, Mexico agreed to put 10,000 Mexican National Guard troops on the U.S.-Mexico border. Well, they already have 14,000 stationed there and had that the case under President Biden. In 2021, they put 10,000 Mexican National Guard troops on the border for President Biden when Biden asked them to, without the threat of a trade war or tariffs or a stock market crash. Mexico even made a $1.5 billion commitment in 2023 for border security, which is $1.5 billion more than they ever got from Trump. Canada agreed to implement a $1.3 billion border package, which they committed to doing in December 2024 under President Biden. Donald Trump got played, and even Laura Ingraham recognizes it. He blinked. So we're going to finish the clip with listening to Patrick Bet-David try to come up with some degree of cope about Donald Trump being a chess master. But just to finish it out.
Or maybe some of his advisors said, whoa, we gotta rethink this?
I think President Trump is a guy that, in my opinion, likes to ask people, what do you think behind closed doors? But at the end of the day, he's a strategist. He's thinking 5, 10, 15 moves ahead. And
I'm not.
It's so funny. I love it when people, Donald Trump is basically like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones or Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. He's like Sauron, He's just like, 17 million steps ahead, right? He's almost got like the time stone. He's like Doctor Strange. You can see so many timelines in the multiverse. It's horse shit, right? Just coming from a guy who's totally full of shit. Donald Trump got played in an unnecessary trade war. There was no reason for it. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was risky to the American consumer and the American stock market. It eroded allies that we've had for decades, are two of the three biggest trading partners we have. And it's not just Laura Ingraham. The Wall Street Journal hit him with a devastating op-ed too, and this is a sister publication of Fox News. Their editorial board announced, Trump blinks on North American tariffs. Donald Trump never admits a mistake, but he often changes his mind. That's the best way to read his decision Monday to pause his 25% tariffs against Mexico and Canada after minor concessions from each country. And I would argue that the Wall Street Journal is being generous when they describe this as a minor concession, because again, they gave this shit under Biden. All you had to do was engage in some level of simple diplomacy and ask President Sheinbaum from Mexico to put 10,000 troops on the border. She probably would have done it if you were a competent diplomat. Her predecessor, AMLO, did it for President Biden. I digress. Trump claimed victory, as he always does. He pointed to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum's decision to deploy 10,000 National Guard troops to the U.S. border to fight drug trafficking, especially fentanyl. Sheinbaum, in her morning statement, said that, quote, "We had a good conversation with Donald Trump with great respect for our relationship and sovereignty." She added that Trump, quote, "committed to working to prevent the trafficking of high-powered weapons into Mexico." The two sides will continue negotiating on security and trade, and Trump agreed to pause the tariffs for months. And remember that, too. Mexico secured a concession from Trump. They got something from Trump. Think about that. They gave Trump what they already gave Biden and probably would have given him for free, and then they got Trump to commit to gun control. You could easily make the case that Sheinbaum was the winner in this case. Again, I digress. Equity markets responded with relief, recovering from steep opening losses and declines in Asia and Europe, though the NASDAQ still fell 1.2% on the day. We're glad to see the two sides step back from an immediate and mutually harmful trade war. But there's much less to this tariff truce than meets the eye. Trump won an announcement of help at the border, though what the Mexican troops will actually do to fight the cartels trafficking drugs isn't clear. Drug enforcement is hardly a perennial in U.S.-Mexican relations, and Mexico has promised to help before, notably during previous presidencies. And I also point out, again, let's be clear, fentanyl is getting into the United States. 86%, according to drug seizures, 86% of the drug seizures have come from American citizens, Americans trafficking drugs from Mexico into the United States through legal ports of entry. As for immigration, Sheinbaum has already essentially agreed to cooperate with restoring the Remain in Mexico policy for migrants who reach the Mexico-U.S. border. Illegal border crossings have also been falling fast, as Trump has sent a signal that illegal migrants won't be allowed to stay in the U.S. I will also note, again, the Wall Street Journal is being very charitable here, because the rate of undocumented border crossings were precipitously declining for the last year of President Biden's term. They were lower under President Biden than they were when Trump left office. Later Monday, Trump paused his tariffs against Canada as well after a phone call with Justin Trudeau, Canada's prime minister. Canada is also deploying more law enforcement to the U.S. border and will appoint a fentanyl czar, among other enforcement promises. If the North American leaders need to cheer about a minor deal so they all claim victory, it's better for everyone. The need is especially important for Trump, given how much he has boasted that his tariffs are a foolproof diplomatic weapon against friend or foe. Trump can't afford to look like the guy who lost. Sheinbaum, in particular, seems to recognize this, and so far she's playing with her Trump cards with skill. None of this means the tariffs are some genius power play, as the Trump media chorus is boasting. The 25% border tax could return in a month if Trump is in the wrong mood, or if he doesn't like something the foreign leaders have said or done. It also isn't clear what Trump really wants his tariffs to achieve. Are they about reducing the flow of fentanyl, or is his real goal to rewrite the North American trade deal that he signed in his first term? If it's the latter, there's more political volatility ahead. Trump's weekend tariff broadside against a pair of neighbors has opened a new era of economic policy uncertainty that won't calm down until Trump does. As we warned many times before Election Day, this is the biggest economic risk of Donald Trump's second term. And again, that is from the conservative pro-Trump Wall Street Journal. Yikes. Sister publication of Fox News. CNN also weighed in on this, and this is what they had to say. How much is real about Trump's wins? What did Trump get? What did it cost, and how will it last? A more objective view of the bizarre showdown with America's neighbors suggests a blunter truth. Trump blinked. Same phrasing the Wall Street Journal used. Trump vowed as recently as last week that there was nothing Canada or Mexico could do to avoid the tariffs he planned to impose, but he pulled back on imposing them anyway. As markets tanked Monday morning, the potential consequences of a North American trade war were laid bare. The potential for tariffs to spike grocery prices that Trump was partly elected to fix came into focus. There were fresh warnings that the auto industry, a cross-border concern, could seize up and the price of a new vehicle would soon shoot up by $3,000. And Canada and Mexico really didn't give up that much. For the Canadians, the cost of a new border strategy was far lower than the fallout of a trade war, and they'd offered the $1.3 billion border strengthening program back in December. Adding a new fentanyl czar was hardly a huge political loss. Mexico has several times moved troops to the border. For example, it sent 10,000 troops in April 2021 at the request of President Biden, who didn't need to threaten to pitch America's southern neighbor into a recession to get it to act. Still, Trump has renewed his reputation as a brazen and belligerent force who sees little distinction between allies and adversaries and leaves his interlocutors guessing at his next move. This is a good political look back home among some of Trump's supporters, but he's also reinforced the impression, left over from his first term, that he's merely transactional and cares more about the chance to claim big wins than the substance of his deals. More seriously, the tariff showdown has confirmed that once again, the foreign policy of the world's most powerful nation is an expression of Trump's volatile character. And by undermining the US Mexico-Canada trade deal that he argued in his first term was one of the world's greatest, again, imitating some of the sentiments of the Wall Street Journal piece, Trump has undermined the trust in America's word and raised doubts over his capacity to close future deals. Constantly offending the country's closest friends threatens to undermine Western solidarity against America's real enemies like Russia and China. And by backing down at the 11th hour, Trump also sent a clear message to Beijing, which has been slapped with a new 10% tariff on exports to the U.S., that he might jump at a potential deal if it looks like a breakthrough, even if it lacks depth. Minutes after those tariffs came in, China retaliated with its own new set of duties, which will come into effect on February 10th. Trump has also started to answer one of the key questions about his second term. Is he serious about paying a political price for the disruptive policies he promised would create a new American golden age? So, it goes on like this. Great article all the way around. One last thing I want to show you, though, is that the Wall Street Journal also has a more intimate breakdown of the run-up to Trump's tariff U-turn, inside the chaotic run-up to Trump's tariff U-turn. On Thursday afternoon, less than 48 hours before Trump was scheduled to slap tariffs on Canada and Mexico, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles got on a call with representatives from nervous automotive companies. The administration, the firms were told, was considering a carve-out for cars that comply with Trump's North American free trade deal, the main request of domestic automakers, according to people familiar with the call. The automakers came away feeling better about their chances of avoiding tariffs, the people said. Less than an hour later, in the Oval Office, Trump appeared to undermine his aides who were working to dial back his universal tariff threat, saying there was nothing the countries could do to stop the tariffs, and mentioned nothing about an automotive exception. On Saturday, he said he would impose 25% tariffs on these countries, no exceptions, except for Canadian oil, which he would hit with a 10% tariff. Trump also announced additional 10% duties on China. Then on Monday, the White House whipsawed again. Trump agreed to delay tariffs on Mexico for a month after a phone call with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, in which she pledged National Guard troops to help stop migration into the U.S. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau later Monday, said Trump's tariffs on his nation were also delayed. And again, it goes into the details. Trump's tariffs on China are still slated to go into effect Tuesday. Even for someone as unpredictable as Trump, the past 48 hours of tariff policies have stunned markets and boardrooms across the world. His moves underscored to corporate leaders and foreign officials that he is willing to threaten major economic disruptions, including price increases for the people who voted him in part to lower inflation, to make his point about what he sees as unfair trade practices and other issues such as fentanyl smuggling and illegal border crossings. On Monday, Trump aides tried to downplay the aggressiveness of his trade actions. The boldness of his Saturday move, which came out over the considerations of top aides like Stephen Miller and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who people familiar with the matter said push for more limited measures, reflect a president emboldened to enact an unabashed protectionist economic agenda. Stephen Miller, of all people, expressed concern that excessively antagonizing Mexico could jeopardize the country's ongoing cooperation to interdict migrants attempting to reach the U.S. border, some of the people said. And Bessent had pushed to have the tariff start at a lower level and then increase over time, other people said. So it goes on like this. It goes on into the chaos of Trump's decision-making and the fact that he undercut his own top aides, including his White House chief of staff, in a way that will almost certainly make future negotiations with Trump much more chaotic and much more risky, and may propel top trading partners to look elsewhere, maybe China. So again, I think it says something that even right-wing media, including the Wall Street Journal and Fox News hosts, MAGA Fox News hosts, are unimpressed with this shit, thus proving once again that on the substance, Donald Trump took a big fat L this past couple of days. It was a defeat if you look at the substance, although MAGA is desperate to spin it otherwise. But when you lose Laura Ingraham, I think you've lost the plot. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.